afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're joining from. As I was introduced, my name is Aditya, and I am the co-founder and CTO of a company based in Singapore called Xaltius. And I have about a decade of experience, more than a decade of experience on the data and AI front in various services and products. And today I'm very thrilled to be talking on a topic that is very close to me, because education, is a domain I've worked with for the past 5 years, still working in that, and talking about how we can leverage generative AI in this particular field is quite exciting and something that all of us are encountering today as well. So during the presentation today, there are a few key points I'm going to be touching on. I won't be going into a lot of technical depth. We'll stick to generic level, but then again, it's important to understand a very quick recap of what generative AI is and why we're talking about it, how it's influencing or becoming a big part of the educational system today, both in K-12 and adult education and corporate education as well. The role that it's playing, how the technology is being infused today. What are the ups and downs? So, we got to talk about both the pros and cons of it. A few glimpses of what we could do as being part of the education system, and then I'm open for Q&A at any point. If you have any questions, please put it down in the chat or the channel, and I'll try to answer them during or after my presentation. Now, in the recent past, right, AI has somewhat taken over our lives, to put it very loosely, right? And this comic strip, it's not a strip, but this comic image clearly depicts that organizations today are putting in a lot of money leveraging artificial intelligence in various products and services that they're offering, and this hilariously talks about that. But the main crux of the topic that I want to focus on today is whether AI, or generative AI in particular, is changing the way we are approaching the educational system, right? Is it changing how we are communicating today? Is it changing how we are teaching and learning today? Now, this is something that all of us have seen over the past few months, but this is certainly not how I prep today. But a lot of people are engaging tools that are available online, that are available to everybody, to help them in their day-to-day work, especially in the educational system. This is a little bit of humor that I decided to add, but it is somewhat the reality in which we are in today as well. Now, if we very quickly go and talk about a background of generative AI, we all more or less know what it is, right? Because we all think, or we have all played around with it, we have all used it for various different purposes. And to put it very plainly, a definition that I just found online while I was reading about it, says that generative AI is nothing but a process in which algorithms generate a certain output that you desire in any form of media based on a certain input that is provided to it, based on the information that it's trained on. And this particular diagram clearly depicts the definition. Generative AI has kind of taken up various sectors of the industry, and there are numerous tools and products that have come up today in the application landscape of generative AI. And this is just a very small glimpse of what is out there today, apart from all the open source that we see. And you may or may not be familiar with all of them, but you certainly have encountered them or used them in some capacity. And it's very important to understand and know, how and when do we utilize these tools and services that are available to us, on the web, offered by different organizations. Now, if we come back to the main topic on hand, which is talking about the educational system. Now, I believe that the educational system is made up of three main components, right? You have educators, you have learners, and you have the process that binds educators, learners, and the system together. Over the past few decades, we have tried to cope up with the digital transformation, with the digital landscape of how software and application has been changing the education system. But today we are seeing a very sharp spike in the way digital transformation is taking over, right? Especially due to the exponential growth of AI and generative AI in particular. So it is very important for us to talk about how it can be developed and used cleanly in all of these different areas. I mean, it's not only the process or the application of it, but how each and every component, person, and system is utilizing it completely to the full capacity and in a clean way. Now, the generative AI education market in particular is going to see kind of a linear to exponential growth over the next decade or so. This particular chart depicts how it's going to grow based on the various users that are using it today. And I mean, you could call it surprising or not, but students, learners are the number one in terms of growth, because they are the ones who are fascinated more. They are the ones who feel that they can use it for various purposes in their educational life or educational career, followed by various other parties in the educational system, teachers, administrators, institutions, so on and so forth. But we're seeing a very big growth in the market, and it's very important for us to understand how we can be part of it and how AI in particular can be made more useful in this particular segment. Now, when we talk about the different components of the educational system, I spoke about educators first. And the reason I spoke about educators first is because they are the ones who are driving education downstream, right? They're the ones who are at the top. Now, educators can leverage on generative AI quite a fair bit in in their day-to-day work to do a few of the things that have been listed down here, right? Firstly, and most importantly, content generation sits at the forefront, and that is where we are seeing tools like, let's say, ChatGPT, Hugging Chat, so on, and many others that are out there being very influential in the content that is coming out today. Now we'll look at some of the negatives of that a little later on as well. Number two is language support. This is where we are trying to bridge, using generative AI, the gaps in cross-cultural teaching or teaching in various languages, and generative AI is able to help a lot in this and close that gap. Number three is curriculum development. We are seeing right from K-12 all the way up to adult education today, the use of generative AI in coming up with a boilerplate for what we would be teaching, how the curriculum is going to be developed. Number four is assessment preparation. We know that it's a lot of manual work, right? And it has been over the past few decades for numerous reasons. Today, with the help of generative AI, we are accelerating this. We are, again, as I mentioned earlier, creating a boilerplate for how we can, set up assessments for various different topics and curriculum, and that is helping educators a lot as well. Feedback and recommendation for educators. In the past, and this is what I have personally seen as well, is that in the educational system, feedback and recommendation has not been to the standard that helps educators quite a lot. There could be personal feedback, there is feedback by the learners, but there are no other components that help educators progress in their day-to-day, right? Generative AI has changed this quite a fair bit, because now in real time they're able to get feedback not only on the way they are talking or presenting, but the way they are showing themselves, their body language to the learners and students, and they're getting this feedback and they're able to improve on a day-to-day. So that is something that is kind of revolutionary, and I would say that space is going to be a very good space to be in as well. And then educators can use generative AI for professional development. They can, get generative AI to help them out in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, speech, emulation, voice control, in terms of presenting themselves, and many other things that would help them in the sphere of education. Then comes the second part, which is the part where students and learners are using generative AI. And this is the topic that has started becoming very controversial over the past few months or so. And we're seeing a lot of regulations being infused very quickly, and we'll talk about that in a bit also. Now, how can learners leverage on generative AI? Now, they can leverage on generative AI to do content summarization. So let's say they're watching a video and they want it, the video to be summarized. That's something generative AI can help do very well. Essay assistance. So whether you're in K-12, whether you are in adult education learning something, it can assist you in crafting, the right story. It can assist you in crafting the right answers to something as well. Number three is problem solving. So in the past, we have seen a lack of step-by-step assistance from a problem to a solution. Generative AI kind of bridges that gap in almost all scenarios, where it's able to give a very healthy step-by-step approach to solving a problem, right? In most cases. And that is very helpful for learners as well. And then we have question clarification. So, kind of rephrasing questions, helping learners understand context better. And apart from this, there are many other things that potentially help learners again in their day-to-day. And today, for especially for students in the K-12 segment, those who are leveraging on digital devices like tablets, phones, computers, laptops, and so on, unlike the traditional learning sense where we are sticking to paper-based and book-based learning, we're seeing generative AI being leveraged a lot by them. Now, what have we experiencing, or what have we been hearing about over the past few months? Now, we have been hearing a lot of comments that when learners or educators are using it, they are not doing so in the right way. And why is this? What are some of the common problems that we are encountering? We are encountering problems of plagiarism, right? We are seeing that AI generated content is being submitted as original work, work which has been done by that person, but we all know that it is generating based out of a lot of information that it already knows or it's seeing. So there's no proper attribution, and that is creating a lot of problems all around in schools and universities. Secondly, to put it very plainly, again, cheating or unethical use. So learners or students are using generative AI to answer their assessments, their examinations, especially where there is little or no monitoring happening. Inauthentic contributions, again along the lines of plagiarism, but in settings where people are working in groups, or you have individual assessments, there is almost little to no learner engagement or involvement, but people are submitting projects and saying this is mine. And then we have misleading essays. Often what happens is AI generated content is not vetted by people who are using it, and without proper vetting, generative AI, especially when you are using it for long format text and stuff like that, can tend to have things that are misleading. And that is another thing that is that people are experiencing. Then you have impersonation. We are seeing this a lot as well, and this is again something that has been the talks of the town over the past few months. Now, obviously, this has all happened, because the educational system had a very traditional approach to things, right? The shift into utilizing digital technology has been slow, and the reason for it, was there were multiple reasons for it, right? And today, when we are trying to, rather than going linearly, we are trying to have an exponential growth and jump 5 steps. These are the problems that are cropping up. And we have been seeing a lot of articles, news that are coming out, which are talking about challenges being presented. For example, Atlanta Business Chronicle had an article which spoke about challenges and opportunities presented for higher education by generative AI. In South Korea, we had the Seoul Education Office talk about how to use generative AI efficiently and ethically. So they were distributing guides for the use of generative AI. University of Tokyo in Japan, they published guidelines allowing limited use of AI in schools. So they said we're not going to allow it to be used all around and for every other thing. Let's try to limit it in some way. And AI tools, kind of is making it difficult and raising questions on the future of grading and teaching all around. And this was again an article from Hong Kong, so especially in the Hong Kong universities there. Now we are seeing this pop up every other day, right? This is not new for anybody, but the main point to raise here is how do we make use of it in such a way that these challenges are averted, right? It's a tough question. It's a tough task going down the next few months, but that's how we have to do things. And that is where being part of education or part of the educational system and being very close to technology, we have always promoted that human in the loop is very important. It's very important that AI can't run by itself. We have to have very close monitoring and interaction with humans to ensure that things don't go off track or astray, right? And that's where humans and AI need to have a collaborative approach in the educational system. We have to use AI in a way that benefits everybody, but at the same time not overuse it and not be completely dependable on it. So I've provided a few examples of how educators and learners should have a human AI collaboration and then work closely together. And we'll take one example from each so we understand. So let's say you are an educator and you want to develop personal learning paths for your learners or students. Now, as a human, you work closely with the learners. You understand their individual needs, their preferences, their learning styles, right? This is something you've monitored maybe for a few months, for a few years. That's what you're more aware about. Now, AI can be used as a tool to analyze this and then recommend. Okay, the key word here is recommend tailor-made learning paths and resources for every student, right? Since this would be a time-consuming task for a human, we are letting the AI do the time-consuming task, and then you are still connected to your students personally, right? That's kind of the key takeaway from that. Now, similarly, when we talk about learners, instead of them leveraging it for doing everything and treating AI as a replacement for them, they need to engage with it in a very smart manner. So for example, they want more enhanced study material, or they want to learn more from what they have. Then the learners are the one who are actually interacting with the study material, and they are seeking clarification, asking questions. And what AI can do is they can take it a step further and generate more interactive materials or quizzes or a deeper understanding from analogies, real world examples, and so on of things that learners want to learn. That's how generative AI in education should function, and that's how everybody, be it you're a technology expert or you're an educator or you're part of the education ecosystem, should promote it to whoever you're promoting it to promote it to all the people that you're working with. We're seeing a lot of tools around, open source tools, for example, like OpenAI ChatGPT, Hugging Chat, another similar interface to ChatGPT, and many others can be leveraged by educators and learners in ways that can benefit them. Now, for example, here on the top left, what we are trying to do is we're trying to develop a discussion based lesson, right? And we are putting in a certain prompt as an educator saying, okay, this is what I want you to generate that I can use as a base or a boilerplate, right? Similarly, I can do many other things, like the one here on the bottom left, which talks about how do I develop a module that showcases how generative AI can be applied to, in a certain context. Similarly, learners can leverage on similar tools like, Hugging ChatGPT, and ask them to generate summaries or learning key points about certain things. There are a lot of other tools available out there which can be used, both by educators and by learners to help them in their day-to-day. Now, for example, this is a tool that is called Copilot, and one of the sub tools available within that is a quiz builder, right? You could do this potentially within ChatGPT. You could do this within Hugging Chat or any other chat interfaces out there. This just wraps an application over those open source models, and it creates something a little more structured. So if you're not a prompt expert, this gives you a more structured way to do this. So here what we are trying to do, for example, is we're trying to generate a few questions as a quiz for Python programming, right? It could potentially be anything, but this is what we are trying to do here. So there are a few things that have been asked by the prompt engine. They're saying, okay, as part of the quiz builder, please do this for me. It's very simple. All you need to know is what you want, and you could potentially leverage this to generate some base questions for you. Now, obviously, you won't be over reliant, because every single question may not be to your liking, or you may want something else, but gives you enough to start with. Takes a few seconds, and as you see here, it'll generate a few questions for you that you can work with. Right. So similarly, there are many other tools in the market, right? Let's say, for example, we want to get some charts, right? And we want to get some charts of things that we're not able to find online, not able to do a Google search on. Then you can leverage such tools to help you build charts as well. And this is very good for, let's say, students wanting to build projects, educators wanting to show some things. Again, available for everybody to use as well. Now, what is happening is that applications, products, institutes are using this technology that is available. Now, all this technology is available, open source, some are proprietary, but if you go into the open source world, there is a lot available there which you can make use of. And they are using this technology for enhancing the educational system, right? Apologies. So if I cite an example, University of Bath, for example, right? Let's take them into account. Now, they are utilizing such technology in their assessment audit process, in various other departments of the organization, in tandem with the work that the educators are doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's being an assistant to them and helping them make their work much faster than it would have been otherwise. So it's more of an accelerant than a replacement, right? And that is where we have to infuse our generative AI technology that we are seeing today, right? It could be used in any other way, but we have to make sure it's an assistant rather than a replacement, and is being used ethically. And that brings me to one of the key things that I wanted to talk about, which is the ethical use of AI in education, right? Now, this has been a broad topic for numerous months so far. Every country, every organization has put in their own regulations and reinforced how to use it. But what we always want to promote is fairness and inclusion, right? We see a lot of bias in content. We see a lot of bias in the way we are generating content. And we have to ensure that AI generated content does not contain such biases or stereotypes, right? You don't want to face any backlash, and you want to make the right use of it. Second thing is transparency and accountability, right? If you are using AI to generate something, attribute to the fact that, okay, I have used AI, or this has been generated using AI, and then you have made your own corrections on top of it, or you have modified it beyond that. Because it is very important for people to understand in educational settings that this is how it has been generated, right? Because later on, if something happens, accountability is important. And last but most important point is avoiding over reliance on AI, right? We want to make sure that AI is used as an assistant, as I was mentioning earlier, to enhance and not to replace. Very key and important point in the educational system. We can't, give students, a smart device and say, hey, there are 5 AI apps installed on this. Use this for the rest of your, learning career. Then we can't do that. We can't do the same thing with educators, because in the educational system, tools are, an aid to make things better, right? They can't replace the experience that people have, especially connecting with other students and learners. And what we always have to encourage is we have to encourage critical thinking and human oversight. So we got to make sure that these are, always encouraged, and these are always emphasized on. So to very quickly summarize, the main aim of my talk today was to give you an idea that generative AI in the educational system is, for lack of better words, is going nuts, right? People are utilizing it to a lot, to an extent that they are unable to come back from the use of AI. That's to put it very bluntly, that's where people are headed today. We got to be very careful in finding that balance. And coming from that background, again, I want to re-emphasize that ethical use of tools is important, especially in the educational setting. And it's important to know what the tool can do and how it works. Thank you so much for listening to me. I will leave the rest of my time for any questions. That is about 5 to 7 minutes or so. Any questions, please do let me know. You can also connect with me or put your questions down on the channel, and I'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you so much, and have a very good evening or afternoon. Okay, so I have a very interesting question that is on the chat. Maybe I will take that up since that's here. So it says that I spoke a lot about the use of generative AI in education. How is AI, if I'm getting the question correctly, in general used in the educational system today, right? Now, if you look at the educational system closely, and we try to divide it into 2 segments, let's say the K-12 segment and then the adult education segment, you see that today, especially in the world of online learning, okay, less in classroom learning, AI has come in various ways, right? Number one is in the development of students in the K-12 segment. So especially in countries like Japan today, applications and technology or technology applications have been infused with artificial intelligence, not generative AI, but artificial intelligence, to measure certain parameters on how students are using the applications, answering queries, and so on, and give relevant feedback to them to ensure that their psychological development towards whatever they are learning is done in the right way. AI is being used, in an online learning setting, again, to, let's say, for example, monitor emotional attentiveness of students, to monitor various other parameters that can help, development of students, in a better way, right? Similarly, for educators, and if you take a very simple example of Microsoft PowerPoint, right? Microsoft PowerPoint is, for example, asking educators, before you do a presentation, you can rehearse. And my AI system can tell you how well you are, presenting, right? What is your pace of presentation? What is your rate of speech? How is your enunciation or intonation? How are you talking? So these are these are examples from things we see. But if you talk about various applications used, like learning management systems, for example, like student, any systems used in an educational setting, all of them are being infused with AI to provide, let's say, content recommendation, to do content recommendation, give the right content to the right student. Now, again, this doesn't have to be generative AI, but AI doing some sort of recommendation. You can go to these particular online resources to learn. You can do this, you can do that. So there are a lot of avenues that AI, and the same thing applies to adult education as well. So there are a lot of avenues in which AI is being used, and I did mention earlier that uh, in the educational setting or in the educational system, it can't take a very giant leap very quickly, right? AI has to come in slowly for certain things that are non-intrusive to start with, right? And these are the things that we are seeing out there today in the general AI sense. There will be more things coming up in the future that will be more directed towards capability enhancement, content more than anything else, because that's where things are more time consuming, and that's where things are things require a lot more experience. So hopefully that answers partly answers your question. I'll be able to type a few more things on the chat for your reference that you can pick up on as well.